Greetings, brothers and sisters. So bunch of stuff to get to today. Hilarious stuff. I want to cover the Hunter Biden, whatever that is. They've done this before with Joe Biden, just dropping some bad news in a hectic news cycle and making it disappear, right? And I'll talk about that. And revisiting some Trump stuff, and then a bunch of things to get to. The Hammer guys, bunch of stuff from him. But one of my viewers wrote about Trump. He's still your favorite character, right? And after the beating I've been giving him over the last, week or so, I would think you would know that's not the case. I'm over it. I just want him to go away like so many people. Like what his character arc has, disintegrated. He jumped the shark. He failed. But the favorite character in the show is this guy, by far. Like this guy right here. I mean, look at this guy. This guy is pathetic. This guy is an absolute joke. But this guy is, a monumental disaster, even bigger than this senile MNFer. But what I want to show you here has to do with this guy and this guy. See this guy right here? You're saying you don't know who this guy is? Well, this guy's going to introduce him. One of my viewers sent this to me. Now, we all saw the way that he mispronounced infrastructure 4 different ways and butchered it each time. It was bad. And, he babbles and he has, just trouble talking. But right after he did that, he did this.
Inflation bill that is going to make sure that there's going to be bridges all across America getting rebuilt. It's a pleasure to be here and to introduce my friend, Congressman Boyle Bile.
Well, thank you. I'm Congressman Brendan Boyle, but...
Did you see what just happened there? He called him Boyle Bile, which, when I first heard it, I was pretty sure isn't anybody's name, ever. Who would have the name Boyle Bile? 2 horrible things. You don't want to have a boil, and you have bile in your stomach, but if you're throwing up bile, you're really, really sick, right? I don't think anybody has the last name of Bile. And so I was like, that doesn't sound like a real name. And this guy, Brendan Boyle, had to reintroduce himself because no one knows who the boop he is, right? So watch this again.
Inflation bill that is going to make sure that there's going to be bridges all across America getting rebuilt. It's a pleasure to be here and to introduce my friend, Congressman Boyle Bile.
Well, thank you. I'm Congressman Brendan Boyle, but...
Look at this guy, can't even believe it. This Crypt Keeper MNFer. So this guy, who nobody knows, for whatever reason, this guy, he's a Harvard graduate, like Fetterman. They're both Harvard alums, part of the Harvard Club. And he is not a well-known entity. Not nationally, at least. Maybe not even locally in Pennsylvania. But now he has just been defined and labeled with a nickname. Boyle Bile. He's not been introduced to the mainstream media. And, how these guys not cracking up? Because that's a horrible butcher of somebody's name. He brings in bile for no reason, right? Brendan Boyle, he takes his last name and makes it his first name, and then he just throws the word bile in there for good measure. That's what he just did. And it's hilarious. And this guy, now everyone's going to know him as Boyle Bile. And you just look at this MNFer back here, right? There's all these people, and this guy's a disaster. And probably all these guys I could find something to mock if we listen to them, because they all suck in one way or another. I could find something to make a joke about. And of course, for this guy, I mean, every time he speaks, normally I just listen to this guy at a press conference, and I can make multiple jokes, and he makes multiple mistakes. He's a horrible public speaker. But in this case, this Gru MNFer, this Gru-looking MNFer, well, let's watch his whole, his whole spiel here, right? Because he comes in, he's looking defensive. This guy's wrapping up here. And everyone else is dressed, in a suit, not without ties, which is, would be my preference. And I don't care. Like, this is great. Like, this is how I dress regularly. I should say, because I work at home and I don't go anyplace fancy, right? Like I wear sweatpants. I'm a shorts wearer. I like to wear shorts. I wear shorts in the winter around the house. If it gets cold, whatever, I put on pants and usually just a t-shirt. And I have a long sleeve t-shirt, Carthard or whatever it is called. Similar to what he's wearing. But if I am in a place where shorts isn't really considered what you should be wearing, I'd wear sweatpants or khakis or, whatever I have to do, because I don't want to stand out. Like, I don't want to be so underdressed that everyone's looking at me, right? It's uncomfortable. And, this is uncomfortable. Like, he shouldn't be wearing shorts, and he should just put on, he's got suits, and this is an official event. And don't do that job. Like, that's part of the job. Like, that's why I don't have jobs like that, right? Because all that goes with it. Like, to me, it's all, wearing suits and ties and all that thing is just a, performative, and it's just, whatever. There's all the stuff that go with jobs that you wear suits and ties with. You have to work with people like this and all the rest of it, right? But stands out because he's dressed like that. And like I said, I dress like that, but I wouldn't, if I was in this situation, I would wear what everyone else is wearing because you're supposed to. It's one of those things, you stand out if you don't. In a way that's goofy, like you look like a moron, like it's, So yeah, I could, I could dress like a slob myself, but I have a job that allows me to do that, right? There's just me and my two dogs who don't care what I wear, right? And so, it's a totally different circumstance here. This guy is supposed to be calming down the American people, and he's in an official event here as an official person, and they have a uniform, and that uniform isn't shorts and a hoodie, right? That's not like he's not even outside. Like, this is, this isn't a situation where that outfit is appropriate. And so this guy totally out of place. And, he's, I don't know if he gets nervous or what happens. His brain just doesn't work right. He just, his brain just, poops out whatever, boiled bile. Like, it just, he can't articulate and use words correctly, which is kind of important for his job. Like, maybe the most important thing.
To be joined by a partner, Senator Fetterman, who's next up at the podium.
Mr. President, a little over a year ago, the President and I were standing right next to each other at a collapsed bridge in western Pennsylvania, a bridge that I drove over just the night before with my young son. And he showed up with just hours after that bridge.
What a guy. It's just incredible.
Collapsed there. And he promised to make sure that any resources that they needed and any help and support. And guess what? That bridge was rebuilt less than a year, well in front of time.
Well in front of time. So now he's not doing great for anybody else, but right now he's doing great for himself. Like, he's getting it done. And what I mean by that is he hasn't got off the rails yet. I'm in the editing process. And I also want to point out here, he's praising Biden for showing up after a bridge collapsed and then promising American taxpayer dollars to repair the bridge, right? It's not like he did something great. He's doing his job. This is a political event to make yourself look good. This isn't him, being a good person. He's not giving his own money and his own, whatever, to the situation. He's showing up to make himself look good, which is, a photo opportunity to promote himself, and then to shell out money that isn't his, right? Like these bills that he's passing, and I'm sure they're all getting kickbacks. Like, I can't prove it, but I know that all this infrastructure bills and all these things, like I said, whoever won the 2020 election was going to be in charge of who got the money when they looted what's left of American wealth. And then we're in the beginning of that process where they're, inflation is being caused by them just stealing money and, padding their pockets, and everybody absorbing as much American wealth before the economic system collapses, and they'll put it into commodities or land or something else as the dollar collapses from inflation. So it isn't like he's a good person, right? Like, he showed up. I couldn't believe it. The bridge collapsed. He showed up and took advantage of this opportunity, photo opportunity, and then he gave us a bunch of taxpayer money to fix it, and for a federal road that we all need. I can't believe what a good guy he is.
Yeah, and now I'm standing next to the president again, next to a collapsed bridge here, and he is here to commit to work with the governor and the delegation to make sure.
The delegation. These are the delegation over here.
That we get this fixed quick, fast as well too. This is a president that is committed to infrastructure, yeah, and then on top of that, the dual kind of a law of the inflation bill that is going to make sure that there's going to be bridges all across America getting rebuilt. It's a pleasure to be here and to introduce my friend, Congressman Boi.
So that was a disaster. He mispronounced infrastructure multiple times. He's like someone who has brain damage. He's, somebody who has mental illness, mental, difficulties, and he can't speak, right? Like, he's somebody who, there's some kind of, he shouldn't be a senator. This whole meeting here, there was a tragedy. The truck collapsed this bridge, and, whatever it was. A section of the road is missing, and, it's a tragedy, right? And it's a concern because I-95 is a very important road, as I documented before, in the east coast of our country, connecting the whole coastal cities, and there's so many of them, up and down the east coast, right? And they're here to reassure everybody. They're here to let everyone know they're on the job. Then this marble-mouthed M&F'er just came up and just, in 2 minutes, made a complete fool of himself and the rest of the people on the stage, right? And he mispronounces this guy's name in a way that, leaves him having a nickname, Boyle Bile. Here's this guy in real life, Congressman Brendan Boyle, representing the 2nd District of Philadelphia, Harvard, Kennedy School. This is where he went to school here. University of Notre Dame, Harvard University, and, the rest of these things. He's an up-and-coming person who has the ability to speak competently. We'll see that here.
Well, thank you. I'm Congressman Brendan Boyle, but the main reason why I'm here,
But, he can call me Boyle Bile. Like, I don't care. This superstar behind me with a crossed arm, wearing shorts, married to a witch, and, just came out of rehab, the psych ward. He can call me, just for fun, he can call me Boyle Bile.
That I'm Congressman. More importantly, I am a Northeast Philadelphia resident and a daily commuter on that section of I-95.
Look at him. Like Joe Biden's just looking. We'll go back to this second here. Like, he's fascinated with what this guy's saying. Look at his face. Look at him. Look at him. Look here. Look at him say, let's go back here.
Thank you. I'm Congressman Brendan Boyle, but the main reason why I'm here, forget that I'm Congressman. More importantly, I am a Northeast Philadelphia resident and a daily commuter on that section of I-95. So you better believe how much I care about this infrastructure project.
Because it affects me, Like, I drive that road. I don't care if you guys die, but, look, I'm Boyle Bile, and I care about myself, right? I mean, it's just an absolute joke, right? They roll out all these people, and they bring Fetterman up there. The guy can't dress appropriately, which, again, this is why he's my favorite character, because there is no way anybody can say he's doing a good job. He's supposed to be inspiring confidence. It's supposed to inspire, like, we're on it. We got this. It's a saying I've learned to despise. It's always, being said in movies and TV shows now. You got this. We got this. I got this. And he doesn't got it. He can't even pronounce this guy's name. Like, he doesn't even come close. I mean, he takes his last name and makes it his first name and then throws in bile for no apparent reason. Like, I don't know why he would even say bile, right? I mean, he could say Boyle Brendan and, confuse and put them in different orders. Where did bile even come from, right? And so, wonderful, absolutely spectacular performance by this guy. And, this guy is always, good for a laugh. And I'm not even looking at what he said. Like, he's going to speak here at some point. Just hear him here. Like, he's always,
To get this work done in record time. We're also working with local officials to redirect traffic, minimize congestion, and along alternative routes. Look, I grew up not very far from here, just across the line in Pennsylvania. From Pennsylvania in Claymont, Delaware. I know how important this stretch of highway is, not just
This also affects him, so they're on it. This is important. They know this highway.
Philly, but to the entire Northeast corridor and to my home state. Over 150,000 vehicles travel on it every day, including 14,000 trucks.
Look at this guy touching his hair over here. He was playing with his hair. This guy crossed arm grew. Like, we're your minions. And these clowns over here, right?
It's critical. It's critical to our economy, and it's critical to our quality of life. We're going to continue to do everything we can within our power to get this back open as quickly and easily as possible.
They're just having a side conversation.
We're not leaving until it's done, and we're going to get this done, God willing, in record time. I'm looking forward to hearing more from the folks on the ground.
So, this is JoJo Magoo. He sucks at public speaking. He's a walking gaff and has been for years. And now he's senile and, he just doesn't compare. He doesn't compare to how bad this guy is right here. And just everything about him, just looking at him, right? Like, what happened is they rushed this guy into this role. I mean, I don't know if they're just punking America and showing that they can do this. I don't know. It's a big joke. I don't know what it is, but I'm glad they're doing it. This guy became a national figure when he stood up to Trump in terms of the election debacle in Pennsylvania. And he became somebody who they targeted to run for Senate. He ran against that clown Dr. Oz. You all know it. He had a stroke. And once he got elected, he probably realized he doesn't have what it takes. Like, he's nervous in front of people. He doesn't like to be in the spotlight. He's just somebody who doesn't deal with this level of performance, right? He could hide. We don't know what he sounded like when he was in Pennsylvania, but no one cared what he was saying because he was just lieutenant governor. He wasn't even the governor. And so, he'd go around and, he could be like a vice president of Pennsylvania. It wasn't a big position. The highest he probably should have achieved. But they targeted him for national attention in a national race of epic importance. He had a stroke. He had the worst debate performance in history. And then he somehow still won. And then he was like, I can't do this job. He had an immediate physical breakdown. He was wandering the streets of Washington, D.C. He got lost, and he just, was had a meltdown. And he said when people were talking to him, they sounded like what Charlie Brown hears when Charlie Brown and the kids hear when adults talk, like the teachers talk in the Peanuts series. And then he had a mental breakdown for depression, and he went in, and he came out, and he's sucked ever since. Like, he's just unbelievably bad. People are watching him so that they can mock him. Like, we do this with JoJo Magoo, but even more so with Fetterman. He's a national joke, and he does what Trump used to do which shows you that the politics is a joke. Like Trump tweeting in the middle of the night and acting in a way that wasn't presidential, which the Democrats and the media hated, but they somehow love this guy. They won't, say the elephant in the room, big, giant, colossal cursor knows that this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He shouldn't be doing this job. And it's hilarious, but they keep on letting him do it. And I'm all for it. Okay, so let's start with the hammer guy, right? The hammer guy is a disaster in himself, and he's obsessed with Trump. He does a story on Trump pretty much every night. I don't watch him every night, but every time YouTube recommends something of his, it's about Trump. And he seems to talk about Trump for at least a quarter of his show, maybe his whole show, but at least a good portion of it. And I think he's been on the air since Trump. I don't know when he got this gig, but I think he's done this for 5-6 years, talking about Trump on a daily basis. Loves him. Like, just, he's the center of his career. Trump is the center of this guy's professional career, right? He's a pundit. He used to be on that show, the McLaughlin Group. And now he has his own TV show. This is the highlight of his career. And his show is about Trump. And so he starts off here talking about this.
Well, Donald Trump is complaining today.
Okay, good. I want to find out what Donald Trump is up to, so I come to your show, right?
About President Biden's 53-year-old son, Hunter Biden, agreeing to plead guilty to the tax violation of paying his taxes late, not paying his taxes on time. Hunter Biden paid the taxes in full. He just didn't do it fast enough. And Hunter Biden agreed with the U.S. attorney in Delaware, who was appointed by Donald Trump, that agreed that he did not tell the truth when he applied for a gun permit. Hunter Biden signed a form saying he was not addicted to drugs at a time when he has publicly confessed, including in his book, that he was addicted to drugs.
Okay, so those were the crimes that Hunter Biden agreed to a plea deal, which are misdemeanors and will not result in any jail time, right? And so think about this, because Hunter Biden is a criminal. Hunter Biden has been a criminal for a long, long time. He's a criminal because he is admitted to buying illegal drugs. And we know drug addicts, especially crack addicts, are linked to all kinds of criminal behavior, right? Hunter Biden has been a lifelong addict. And somebody who is a crackhead and has distorted reality, because, that kind of addiction warps your psyche. I mean, all these things. He's been in rehab 8 or 9 times, and he's been, an addict of all kinds of substances that when you start using stuff like crack, it warps your perception of reality, even when you're not using it. I mean, addicts' brains are different than, a sane person's brain. And you don't want people like that having guns. In fact, this handgun that may be in question here, I don't know if it's this gun, because he might have multiple guns. Again, this is Joe Biden, a guy who's all into gun control, keeping the guns out of people who are irresponsible. His brother's widow, who he was banging, was flipped out and thought he was going to commit suicide. And so she took his handgun and threw it in the trash next to a school, and a homeless guy found the gun and took it. And it was such a scandal, the Secret Service got involved. This is 2 or 3 years ago, and it was being investigated by the Secret Service and the federal government. And it's exactly why you don't want somebody who's on crack having a handgun, right? And he lied on the form, but then revealed in his interview with Jimmy Kimmel from his book that he had been on crack for years. And during that time, to pay for his crack addiction, he was involved in these corporations, Burisma and this Chinese corporation, and the governments of the Ukraine and China, foreign corporations, who somehow were paying him millions of dollars to smoke crack. He wasn't showing up for work. He didn't have a position there, a real position there. He was just going to seedy motels in West Hollywood and all over the place, and strip bars and banging strippers and impregnating them and not even remembering that happened, and doing all this incriminating things on laptops and dropping them in tubs and leaving them at computer stores. This guy is a disaster, right? And a criminal. And he was being paid for influence, buying influence for his, dad, his dad being a vice president and then eventually president, and people were paying him for access to his father, which is in itself criminal and borderline treasonous, right? And so he is, Hunter Biden, now a famous artist. People launder money through art. And they allowed him to, they do these things where somebody admits to something. And they did the same thing with Jojo Magoo. When Jojo Magoo was about to announce his candidacy, he had a problem that CNN had documented in their own hit piece when he was running in 2015. I've showed you that video so much, that he was groping women. Jon Stewart did a thing called The Audacity of Grope. David Letterman made fun of him. There was this now dead attorney general, whatever his name was, I forget his name, doesn't matter, who he went up behind his wife and started to, maul her for, left his hands on her shoulders, and everyone was freaked out by it when he was vice president. So they knew he had a groping problem. There's all this evidence of him doing it, like things that were weird with kids when he was swearing in. I've covered this extensively. So has so many people. They had to address this because it was going to come up in the campaign. And so they had a woman come forward like a shill, and, a Democratic candidate or politician in Nevada or something like this, and another woman come forward and saying that he touched them, in a time of Me Too, that made them feel, awkward or not okay with it. It was a controlled problem where the victims were controlled and a part of the club, a part of the, And Joe Biden came out and said he grew up at a different time, and, he didn't admit that he's a creep and like he just is weird. I mean, it's really weird. He did it with Hillary Clinton. He did it with all these people, all these kids. And, Whoopi Goldberg defended him on The View, saying he was just a person from that, age group. And it's just a little bit too familiar, as she said it, right? And it went away. Like nobody talked about it again. Trump and his team didn't talk about it. I mean, even though it was, Trump had his own issues with grab him by the boob, right? So there's all those things. But, he dealt with the problem. It was never brought up by the media or anybody else again. And they're trying to do this with Hunter Biden. That they're saying, all right, yeah, I've made some mistakes. He's admitting to something. It's long before the election. And, like this guy's saying, oh, he just didn't pay his taxes on time, and he made a little mistake and didn't tell the truth on a form with a gun. He says, it's no big deal, right? I mean, this is what they're trying to do here, is minimize the criminal behavior of Hunter Biden. And at a time when Trump basically confesses in an interview, and all they're talking about is a Titanic sub of some rich person who's obsessed with the Titanic and ends up, dying in its pursuit, and that they're rolling out all this, resources for something that's, unnecessary. Like, stop looking for the Titanic, right? It's over.
The U.S. attorney appointed by Donald Trump has decided not to prosecute Hunter Biden for falsely filling out the gun license application. As long as Hunter Biden remains on good behavior during the terms of the probation he will likely receive for the tax misdemeanor that he will plead guilty to. No court date is yet set for when Hunter Biden will plead guilty. Many legal observers today have said that under similar circumstances, a taxpayer and gun permit applicant who was not famous might not be charged at all.
At all. They're not even crimes. This guy's innocent. I don't know why they keep on picking on this poor Hunter Biden. I don't even get it.
Anything in cases identical to Hunter Biden's. But Donald Trump is very, very angry that Hunter Biden is not being charged with more crimes for which there is absolutely no evidence.
There's a ton of evidence. He's a crackhead who got paid millions of dollars to smoke crack. Is that not enough evidence for you, Fish Hammer dude? Right? It's Hammer guy, right? Like that's, you know, the fact that his he banged his sister's widow, and I mean his ex-wife has talked about what a disaster it was to be married to the guy. He impregnated a stripper named Dallas from Arkansas. I mean, all these things. None of those things. There's no evidence of any criminal behavior, right? There's no evidence at all. Buying and possession of crack in California is a felony. And, you know, he probably bought large amounts of crack. But he consistently had crack in possession. And so they have like a 3 strikes you're out. Like, he could have been arrested 3 times. He's admitted to these crimes, right, in a book. And in an interview in California with Jimmy Kimmel. And so he has had all these illegal drugs in various states. We know that he's lived in New York and California and Delaware and these other places. And he's been buying drugs regularly. Who knows if he's been sharing drugs with minors, you know, prostitutes. He has prostitutes and these things. So these are all crimes, right? Paying a prostitute, you know, using a prostitute for, you know, all these things. They're felonies, misdemeanors. And in California, if you get 3 misdemeanors, it's, you know, 3 strikes you're out, 3 felonies. I don't know what it is. I mean, he could be in prison. Like, people who smoke crack, buy crack, usually end up in prison and in you know, the legal system in one way or another. And that's just, you know, one of his many sort of you know, vices and indiscretions. So the guy, there's plenty of evidence here. The whole laptop, and this guy's like, no, Hunter Biden is innocent. You know, just because this whole narrative they have and his obsession with Trump.
Donald Trump is very angry that Hunter Biden will not be going to prison for not paying his taxes in full on time. Donald Trump apparently believes that if you violate a legal deadline, you must go to prison.
Well, why not just hand them over then? Because I had boxes. I want to go through the boxes and get all my personal things out. I don't want to hand that over to Nara yet. And I was very busy.
I don't want to hand that over yet. Donald Trump had a legal deadline, and he didn't want to hand it over yet. A legal deadline in the form of a federal subpoena.
So that's this, right? This guy, and he's in his glory days. Because there is a much more likelihood of Trump end up being convicted here. That's the way it looks like it's going to go. You know, we're going to get back to him. He had an earlier thing before all this stuff happened that I have up. Okay, so here it says, legal experts say the charges against Hunter Biden are really brought. The federal statute making it unlawful for a drug addict to possess a gun faces court challenges. The misdemeanor tax charges also rarely result in jail time. So what they're trying to say here is this is political, and they're, you know, abusing and targeting him unfairly, right? When he was in possession of crack cocaine and other illegal drugs, he was buying drugs illegally. Who knows if he gave drugs to minors, sold drugs, all these things that go with that, right? If he sold drugs to other people. And he was employed by foreign companies at the time, and the only reason that he would be employed by them is access to his dad. And so, you know, again, he was a crack addict. And so there's a lot there. But we know for a fact that he was involved in illegal drug trade at the very least, aside from what we suspect or what might be on the laptop or things that have been thrown out there. He's admitted to buying drugs, illegal drugs, from drug dealers and also prostitutes. There's prostitutes involved in his, you know, there's pictures of him with prostitutes and things like this. And those are both crimes, right? You can get arrested for soliciting a prostitute. They have vice cops that go out and get Johns, you know, which he was, a John, you know, a customer of a prostitute, they get them to proposition a undercover policewoman who's dressed up like a prostitute, and they bust the guys, right? You can go to jail for that. And whatever state-by-state laws there are, it's illegal. Prostitution's illegal. It's illegal to purchase drugs from a drug dealer. And he's done all that, right? And so what's happened here, which we all know, is that they've given him these little slap-on-the-wrist crimes as a way to, this is a deal that they're making with the government and all the various powers that be to protect his dad and protect him to whatever extent, and protect his dad by protecting him. And, he admits guilt to smaller offenses that he won't have any jail time, and they throw the rest of the stuff out. And, we've seen this happen before. They did this with Andrew Nips Cuomo, right? Andrew Nips Cuomo basically manslaughtered all the people in the nursing home that died from COVID because he put really sick people in with them. It was like 9,000 people, and then he hid the deaths. And those are felonies, and those would result in lawsuits and, all kinds of, the state would have to pay for it, right? It wouldn't be coming out of his money. It would be coming out of the state of New York. So instead of firing him for that, which, they didn't want to bring attention to that, they fired him for Me Too stuff, right? This happens all the time. It's a constant. Hunter Biden plea deal sparks political fight over independence of justice system. Democrats say the plea proves the Department of Justice is independent. Republicans say it isn't. Well, we know it isn't because they're giving him no jail time, and we know he's committed crimes, and there's all kinds of things that need to be investigated with this guy, right? Plus the fact that they already rigged, they squished this story, they squashed this story, and they censored the page 6 New York Post for covering this right before the election. And so there's lots of things that need to be investigated about this. And again, not a right-wing person, because Trump's a complete idiot, buffoon, narcissist criminal himself, right? And so this isn't like, the left is so much worse. The left has more power as it stands now, but Trump and his cronies are just as bad in their way of corruption, right? But this is corruption, and they're hiding it. They're protecting this guy, and they're protecting this guy. Hunter Biden baby mama Ludin Roberts settled child support dispute. Her real name is Dallas. Her stripper name is Dallas, and she lives in Arkansas. And so they made this deal where he's giving her $20,000 of monthly child payments, agreed her $20,000 monthly child support payments being slashed after she showed up in person to his deposition. They're reducing his payment to $5,000 a month, so it's hard for him to sell Access now, right? He didn't receive exorbitant payments for his painting sales because he's an artist, right? But $5,000 a month is still quite substantial, right? That's $60,000 a year, and it's not what it was before, which was $240,000 a year. And so, there they are, the mom and the stripper and her baby. There they are kissing again. She likes to pose with her that way. They often are looking at each other like this. She's wearing some leather pants. She's wearing her stripper shoes. It's all working out. It's all coming up roses for Hunter. Scumbag Hunter Biden was a member of the exclusive LA sex club Sanctum since band founder claims. I don't know what since means. The founder of the elite Los Angeles-based sex club has been banned from the X-rated organization after claiming Hunter Biden was once a member and got kicked out for being a scumbag. He got kicked out of Sanctum. Now, I've covered this before. Huffington New York Post has covered this Sanctum thing. It's really creepy. It's like Eyes Wide Shut type of elitist sex club type of things, right? Of course, Hunter Biden was a part of it. And of course, Hunter Biden misbehaved and acted like a scumbag and got kicked out, right? These are all things related to Hunter Biden. But he's a complete innocent person. He's not a criminal, right? He just does everything criminals do. Okay, so let's wrap this thing up by going back to Trump here.
Jack Smith accused Trump, remember, of only returning some documents, keyword, some, and then lying to the DOJ by claiming he gave all the documents back. Now, that is one of the core allegations of some of the crimes Trump stands accused of, that he is now set to go on trial for in August. Some versus all. So listen here as Trump admits he only gave back some.
We
They
were
did ask
talking.
for it.
No, and
They said,
I gave
"Can you
them
give the
some,
documents back?"
And we were talking.
Okay. What you hear there, quite briefly, is a type of confession. It's quick, so I'm actually going to play it again for you right now. And we've put on the screen here because we're not just repeating anything that's said, we're reporting out the context and the facts, or as some might say, both sides of the case. Well, you're about to hear that again quickly with the very certification Trump's team submitted, which, remember, claimed all documents were returned. DOJ's evidence shows that Trump did not return all documents to the archives or to DOJ. And that's what eventually led to the search. So here is that moment.
We
They
were
did ask
talking.
for it.
No, and
They said,
I gave
"Can you
them
give the
some,
documents
and
back?"
we were talking.
He said, we were talking and I gave him some. Now, it's a hard audio to understand, right? And any and all responsive documents accompany this certification that he wrote in this when he gave them back, that all documents were returned. And now it seems that he's saying some. Again, this is something that'll be brought up in the trial, and why you don't do interviews talking about criminal matters, because you don't try the court in public. This isn't going to help you, right? His Trump followers are going to believe whatever. They're all going to rearrange reality to excuse his behavior. That's just what Trump people do. That's what Trumpers do. But, you know. This is absolutely wonderful. You know, in terms of, like, just the idiocracy here and why he's up there. He just doesn't have to be there. And at a time when Hunter Biden, they're trying to, you know, get that thing done before the election kicks in, you know, dismiss all Hunter Biden's criminal behavior. Like we handled it. He pleaded guilty to a couple of misdemeanors. We don't have to talk about Hunter Biden anymore. And so at a time where that's happening and they somehow, everyone seems to be more concerned about this sub-story. Okay, so I already did the voiceover you're going to hear next. And it's going to a little bit disrupt the flow, but I think it'll be fine. Because I was commenting on stuff to do with, you know, Hunter Biden and the rest of it. But first I want to address a few comments I have just read while I was editing the video. And, you know, it's funny how oftentimes I wonder what people are hearing on the other end. Like, I think I've done a good job of becoming a better communicator, or even a good communicator, and making my, you know, my takes and the things I say here simplistic. Because, you know, simple is always better. People think simple is stupid, but simple can often be brilliant, right? And simple is better than complex, right? And so, you know, I've worked on it. I wasn't a good communicator. I was a bad communicator before I started doing this, like, as a job. And so I think I do a good job of explaining what's going on. But oftentimes in the comment section, a lot of times in the comment section, and then messages and things that people send me, I'm wondering what they're watching and what they think my point of view is, right? Like, are they just trying to push their agenda, or are they just oblivious to what I'm saying? And I understand that it's hard to watch all of my content, but, you know, I even get comments like that where people are like, do you watch what, you know, like, why are you even saying that, right? And so when I ask people I made 2 videos, one video in which I asked people what they watch, you know, my audience, people who are here liking my videos and other channels that they like. It didn't have to necessarily be truther channels or like mine or any of these things. I don't have to like the channels or I don't have to watch them myself. Myself. I'm not plural. Myself. That's not important because I'm not the demographic that's being advertised to. I'm running ads on channels where people who might watch my videos would see an ad and possibly come to my channel, right? The whole exercise has been interesting, like I said. And the channels they were running it on had no chance. I mean, it'd be it would be almost a miracle that those channels would have people watching their videos who would also watch mine. But you're the best group of people to ask this question to. And in the past, when I've asked for feedback or information from people, there's always been an overwhelming response, which is great. I appreciate it, but it's a lot. So I had to make the video private, and then someone wanted to see the video because they wanted to look at the list of different truther channels and check it out for themselves. So I put it on the membership. It's now open to the membership. But I'm not looking for more channels at this time. I might ask for them in the future. But what I wanted was, ask you guys what you guys watch and channels that you think might, have people who would also enjoy my content. And if YouTube was doing its best and Google was doing its best for me, which I don't know if they ever will because of their, limitations or whatever's going on with them, their algorithms and their, they would get all of these channels and they should be able to analyze it with their AI bots and their, their extensive algorithms and their whatever they're using to gather data and figure out a profile of the kind of channels that would serve me best as running ads. I mean, they should be able to easily do that already. But since they didn't, I asked for your help, and now I've given them all that they need. Again, me doing extra work, you guys helping out for what Google could easily do for me themselves, right? But I wasn't, commenting on any of those things, right? In terms of what was a truther channel, what wasn't. Because I got a couple comments here. Let me read these comments. One person said, Paul, Google is CIA controlled and used for other schemes. Profits are a side benefit of their schemes. Well, why do you think I wouldn't know that? Like, I'm not talking about that when I'm talking, because I also criticize Google as a business. You have to differentiate between what level of something you're talking about, right? But certainly it is a business that's traded publicly and has to answer to its stockholders and, the business world. But that isn't even what I was talking about. What I was talking about in the last video was that Google and YouTube, beyond a business and beyond what CIA, whatever governmental agency, whatever their handlers are, whatever purpose it has, right? Whatever their primary purpose is, has a responsibility on a spiritual level. Like, like a restaurant, you provide food and Google provides information. And whether it's, it's got its nefarious handlers, of course it has all that stuff. It's controlled, everything's, anybody who's, well, I'll get into that moment with these other channels. Well, let me just read that comment as well. And so this person wrote, some people actually believe that gatekeepers, Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, Russell Brand, etc., are all media truth seekers. They're done even more harm than traditional media. Well, I don't think they've done more harm. Alex Jones has, certainly, in the long run. I mean, Alex Jones was a place where a lot of people, where he was like a gateway into the truth community. But he, in terms of being all the stuff that he's done. But again, I wasn't commenting on all those things. I was looking for places that people who might, if an ad was run, that they might, click through and see my channel and then end up staying here. And, if it's any of those people or any of the people that are considered shills or whatever they were, I wasn't thinking about that because it's just not important. It's whether or not it is going to be an effective place to run ads. Like, it's entirely a different, what I normally do here, because this is marketing. And I don't, I haven't had to market. Now I do. Like, to keep my channel going, I need to expand it. And, there's things I might have to do differently, which I may or may not be able to do. Like I have to, I mean, I do things all the time to push people away on purpose sometimes, or just part of how my personality is configured. And so that's part of it, right? And I have to change what my goals and, the stress level that comes with more and more success, more and more what people call success. And so there's all that as well. So, I have to balance it out. I have a desire to be under the radar, which is a good thing as well. So, I have to balance all those things out, but I need to increase it at least a little bit, right? And, the ads may or may not work. And if they don't, they don't. But that's what I'm trying. And this is, what I was focused on. But when I was talking about Google and YouTube in terms of their, business model and all that, what I was really talking about was that you have a responsibility. Like if your role in life is to do something, even on a corporate level, then you're supposed to do that thing, right? There's a big part of the Mahabharata where Arjuna refuses to fight because he doesn't want to kill his teachers and his loved ones who are on the other side, right? Family members, beloved family members that he has to kill now because they're at war. And his job is to be a soldier, right? And, not think about such things. And so there's an exchange between him and Krishna, an interesting exchange. Because you have a role to play. And, that role is that role. And if you refuse to play that role, if you neglect that responsibility, there's a punishment for it. Regardless of what your primary operating, your primary purpose for, material handlers or whatever it is, making money is part of it. But you also have a service you're providing. And Google and YouTube has failed in that by skewing their system, by skewing their search criteria and these other things, right? So that was the point. It wasn't, whether Google CIA owned or any of these other things. That's not what I'm talking about. Like people do this all the time. I'm specifically talking about something for a reason. It's on whatever level it's on, right? There's all these different levels and point of views. Another person wrote that there is this purity idea in the truth community that if you're making money, you're some sort of a shill, right? Which I've talked about in the past. This person didn't agree with it. But again, that isn't the point here because, I'm not here for the truth community. I'm not here for, anybody else. Like I'm not doing what I'm doing for the reasons that other people do what they're doing, right? Like one, it's a job. It's a job that I need to be compensated for. But another, it's my responsibility to pass on information that I have. And I felt that, long before I had this YouTube channel, specifically about Sahaj Marg. Because I know Sahaj Marg works. The meditation that I do works. Now, what we call gratefulness works in ways that most people who do Sahaj Marg don't. Like I've had experiences and benefits that most people don't have, right? And I've seen the effects of it, and I know more about it than the average person who's been doing it for years, or even people who've done it longer than I have, just because of the way that it sort of, I was so incompetent beforehand, I could barely function. And I'm a much more competent person now, and a much more loving person. And I mean, all kinds of things that I could tell you about the internal benefits. It's changed me inside. And so I know how great it is. And I don't care if people do it or not. In fact, part of me, mostly I'm happy when people do it, but part of me, I'm glad you're not doing it, right? When I told my brother about it, it ended up being a hassle, and he was complaining all the time, and, he was doing things that were bumming me out and draining me and bringing me down. And part of me was like, I just quit. It'd be better. I'm sorry I told you about it. Not that I really was, but part of me was bummed. And, part of me is stressed out about the extra responsibilities of doing the gratefulness meditation. And, part of me is just, overwhelmed and, even expanding this channel, all these things I said. I'm a private person, and, and one important thing is to me is that I don't get maxed out and get stressed out and take on more than I can do. It's important for me to, I've learned this lesson from the past, that when I get overwhelmed and I, think I can do more than I can do, and then, I can't. It sucks, and then, you can't do anything about it because you're kind of locked in. So I'm very cautious about that. I've been talking about that in my Journey series. But in terms of what I do here, I just put out the information and don't think about the results. Don't think about how it's received, and I'll either have an audience or I won't. But I know I have something great to offer because it's changed me in so many ways. Information about the Sizemark system and the energy that comes with it that's embedded in my videos and also now in the Gratefullness stuff. And there's things like some people find me funny and some people like my thoughts or like, my insights to things. So there's that as well. But I have something to offer and it needs to be compensated for, right? And I don't even think about it in terms of, if it wasn't, then I would do something else, right? It isn't that I'm locked into doing this and I would change my behaviors to cultivate a bigger audience. I'm not going to compromise what my channel's about just so that I can have more people here and, not say certain things and withhold information just not to, piss off viewers and things. And that has value in itself, right? But if people think, that I'm a shill or whatever reason, that I'm not, whatever, then they're welcome to leave. Like, that's not my problem. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not selling something that I'm offering a solution that can save the world. And I'm not selling something that's, that's going to be something maybe some Christians are going to want to hear, or, some QBs or Trumpers are going to want to hear. Certainly liberals are going to want to hear. I'm going to say things that disagree with your belief system because that's part of my job as well, right? To, call things the way I see them, regardless of whether people agree or not, because it's not to get 100% agreement and also pat people on the back and make them comfortable or feel good about their own beliefs. Because as a spiritual person, you're supposed to be questioning your lens that you see reality all the time. It should be changing. You should be seeing reality clearer. And really, it's seeing God. It's being able to, you don't see God, but you experience God. And your understanding of God should grow more and more as you evolve through life, as you mature through life, right? And that's some of the stuff I offer here, right? But in terms of the videos I put out, I was talking about specific things. I'm not commenting on the truth community and who's what and who's a shill and who's not. I'm not, asking for that. I'm asking for what do you watch? As people who like my videos, what other channels do you like? People who like my channel, what channels do you like? Because those channels would be good channels to post videos on or post advertisement on so that, people might come to my channel. That's simply, the need of the day. And we'll see what YouTube or Google does. I don't concern myself with that because I can't control it. I just got to do what I got to do. And I feel like I've done enough and, they either can make this work or not. And, the ad itself might fail. Like I did the best ad I could. People might see the ad and not, or I have to make more ads in the future. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to go. But I do know that I have to do something here, at least give it a try, because, the way that everything's working out, Google or YouTube is paying less money to creators, and they are purposefully hiding our channels and doing these things. And, eventually it's just dying a slow death, right? I'm doing what I can to keep on presenting this content, and I have to do that because I feel like it's my duty. But, I can only do what I can do. Anyways, let's get back to my original voiceover here. And in a bigger way, what's happened here is you've had the truth community now since really 2001. And again, it's not really community, but it's what we call this, this movement where people could do research and find alternative explanations from the official story on YouTube and other social media platforms. And there's a lot of disinformation, but the truth part, right? The part that's truthful, the part that's confronts, that shows an official story being a deception. And there's a lot of that. Like, there's a lot of disinformation. There's a lot of, right-wing, left-wing kind of focus, right-wing truthers, all this stuff on the internet. There's a lot of, the woke and the right-wing QBs and all these different groups that are deceivers and self-deceived, all these people. But there is a lot of truth. There's a lot of information out there now that destroys the official story on all levels, like religious levels, political levels, business levels, medical levels. I mean, all these things, right? There's a lot of information that they don't want you to know about and really destroys their power and control. And with that, destroys the system because the system can't be made honest. Like the system can't handle the truth, right? And so they've had to deal with this. They've had to come up with a plan on how we're going to deal with this. And Trump was a great asset for them to learn to deal with this. In terms of, he was somebody who embraced some of these so-called conspiracy theories, and he was a lightning rod for, hate from the left and things like this, and a cult figure to his followers. And so they've been able to use him and the Q movement and all this other stuff that they're doing, in terms of like this narratives they're pitching, that conspiracy theorists are evil and are a threat to the system. So that's, essentially how they've dealt with all that information. Lump it all together, show you the worst disinformation, the worst, stupidest, craziest lies, and create a profile for people who are, who don't agree with the official story as being crazy conspiracy theorists that are a threat and possible insurrectionists or whatever it is. And that they have to be, these narratives are dangerous and have to be suppressed and have to be censored on these social media platforms. And so that's like phase one. Like they've been working on that for a while. And then phase two was to then adopt some of these same techniques in their own news media. To have their own news media people. They've changed their format. And I can get into that with CNN. I got to show you some of that. They've changed their format completely, which is, not really. They instead of sitting behind the desks, they stand up now. I've seen it. They come out and they walk around on a stage instead of sit behind a desk and reading the news. That's their big, adjustment since the Chris like debacle and the stuff that happened before that. And so there's that, right? But then there's the political movement. And so what the right wing is doing is pretending that they have been the good guys all along, and the Democrats have created some kind of a deep state, right? And that any attack on Trump and the Republicans and the Trumpers is political and evil, right? This is where they're saying there is evil in the government. There is conspiracies. There is criminal behavior. But it's just coming from the left, right? And they're a threat to our safety. They're a threat to our, the police and all these things, the Antifa and the BLM riots, right? And that they're all, that's what they are about. They're evil, the deep state and all this stuff, right? So there is evil and there is conspiracies, but it's just one-sided. And that we alone are there to bring truth and justice back into the system, and Trump is our leader, and this is, all of that. And the left has chosen a similar tactic, saying that Trump is the evil. He's the criminal and conspirator, and all the people who are questioning the official story and making up these bizarre allegations, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, right, all these other people, the QBs, they're a threat to the government. The government isn't that bad. Joe Biden is a decent guy, and his son isn't that. These are all politically motivated distractions from the criminal Trump, who is, was never fit to be president, and he doesn't know how to handle classified documents. And, they're the only ones that can stop him from ruining the world and, all these things. Joe Biden's going to destroy the world with nuclear war and his economic bailouts. Trump's going to destroy the world with his criminal behavior, irresponsible behavior, and all these other things, right? And that's how they're dealing with it, that they're giving some credence to the idea that there are these, criminal elements in the government and liars and deceivers and all these things, but it's on the other side. And all the things that they do and being accused of are somehow politically motivated and are part of some, mental illness on the other side, right? Crazy Republicans, crazy liberal Democrats, whatever it is. They're counting on you being either stupid or scared or ambivalent and focused on your own problems selfishly and can't deal with it. They're not going after people who are in the truth community. They're not trying to win you over. They're not going after smart people. They're not going after critical thinkers. They're not going after anybody who's going to do enough research to see through their scams. They just want people who are emotionally triggered, who are freaked out, want to see a savior and a hero. They want to know, you want to know who's the good guy, who's the bad guy. And it's to say you're the same person, like the extreme left and extreme right, the Trump haters and the Biden haters and all these different groups are all the same. You're the same personality type. If you're still into Trump and you still believe that the left is horrible and evil and Trump a savior, you're the same kind of person who thinks, on the other side that Trump is evil and Trump has got to be stopped. You're the same kind of personality profile. You're the same kind of, you're just like them. Even though you hate those people, that's you. You're exactly like them. You're just on the other side. You have different beliefs, but your personality, your ego, the way that you think about the world, the way that they can work you is the same. It's the same tools, the same, they're applying the same principles on both sides, right? And they're going after people who are freaked out and want, they can't deal with the idea that the country is completely corrupt and dysfunctional and goes against God's will. Not just the country, but the system. And it's collapsing, and there's nothing anybody can do about it. They don't want you to, if you can figure that out, and then you have to deal with that, we all have to deal with that. So then what do we do? Because there's no reason to try to take the system down. There's no reason to deal with the system at all because it's collapsing, right? So the news media is aimed at a certain personality configuration of people who still believe the system can be saved, people who are, not willing to realize the whole extent of the left-right paradigm and the power behind it and all these other things, people who want to pick sides. The truth community, people who are so-called awake, whatever that means, on a real level, not the far right-wing of people and the far left-wing people, but people who are aware of the left-right paradigm, all these things. You're not going to participate anyway. And you don't have an option. You don't have a power group behind you. You don't have money and resources. And even if you did, the best thing you could do is take down the system. The ultimate thing that you could do is take down the system. And that would screw you. That would screw all of us, right? At least on a material level. That's all we can do. We can't do anything else. We can't save the system. We can't affect change. Of course, we become spiritual people and all these other things. I'll get to that in a moment, which I always talk about. But in terms of the system itself, we don't have any recourse. We can't, we can try to bring the truth to light to people who don't want to hear it. And we've already known how that has gone and failed. And if that was successful, if everybody realized what we realized, the system would collapse because the system is going forward based on perception. And so, all of those things, all of the above, right? All of these things. And so they're just counting on you to be scared enough or stupid enough to believe that Hunter Biden's innocent or believe that Donald Trump is innocent. That's their position. They've thrown out any idea of going after, conscious people, awakened people, higher level people, talented people, people with, that aren't just grinding it out, people who aren't dead inside, they're just grinding it out and can't, people who aren't so overwhelmed that they can't take a look at the truth of things. And so there was a comment yesterday where a person said this, not yesterday, 2 days ago. to my golf shoes, Trump embarrasses his followers. And the person says, all we do is just talk about our enslavement every single day. MK Ultra programming at Litz, at its finest, I guess we were all dumbed down and lied to. That's not how I talk about here. You know, I don't understand why the person would comment that to me or the video, because, you know, what I've said over and over again, you can either be a slave to God or you can be a slave to the system. And when you understand that the people control the system are subject to the same earthly laws and out of control, even though they seem, you know, I call them the controllers because they want to control everything, but they can't. They are just as out of control as you are. Like, you think they're controlling everything and they always get their way, but they don't. They constantly are being disappointed, things constantly going away that it's not part of their plan. And they're so disconnected from God, they have even less control than you do, because they're not going in the divine direction. They are going in an egotistical direction, and they have, you know, small levels of power and control, certainly money power and religious power and some of these other, you know, material egotistical powers. But they are, you know, weak and scared, and, you know, they can't control their own. I mean, they want to be immortal because they're scared of death and all these things, right? They're scared of losing their power. They're, you know, whatever. And, you know, there's a level of understanding here that most people don't have. And most people in the truth community are obsessed with what I call the controllers, thinking they control everything, and that everything has to do with them, and everything that happens is them doing something, and, you know, whatever it is. To whatever extent they're doing God's will, because the system has to come down. And, you know, again, I mean, the system goes against God's will, but there's contingencies which these self-destructive, you know, suicidal type people, I mean, they're beyond just like suicidal. There's a level of just self-sabotage and all of it, right? And desperate and freaked out and, you know, scared, and they're losing control of their narratives. They're losing control of their AI. They're losing control of their economy. They're losing control of all of it, the media and all these things. And the truth is coming out, and they can't stop it. Like, even if it's, you know, even if they can control the mainstream narratives, people are aware of things that they weren't aware of before. People are changing. And, you know, it's happening because of divine reasons. And like I said, you can look at everything as coming from the controllers, or you look at everything as coming from God. And if you do that, you're not a victim. That means everything's planned. You chose this life. You chose this body. You chose this personality. You chose your circumstances. And, you know, or there are things you have to go through to move closer to the divine. This is why I talk about the meditation I do, the Gratefullness meditation, you know, the Sajmarg meditation. I've been doing for years, that everything is there for your ultimate return to the source. And that religion and, you know, the government, politics, and money and all these agencies are working against that. They don't want you to connect to God directly. And so when you do that, then there's no sense of enslavement, because you've chosen this. The circumstances of your life and your birth and your, you know, your oppression or whatever it is, are things that are there for your spiritual benefit. And whatever you're born into, whatever race you are, whatever class you are, whatever country you were born into, whatever sex, whatever anything, is there for your ultimate, you know, spiritual journey and your soul's quest to return to the source. And when you understand this, then there's no sense of enslavement, because this isn't something wrong that's happening to you. It's something that you've chosen. It's what's best for you. If you don't understand that's what I'm talking about here, and I'm showing you that the system is, it's incompetent. Like, the system is a joke. Like, you know, these people are a joke. You know, whether it be Fetterman, I mean, they're just pretending like Hunter Biden isn't a criminal and Fetterman's competent and Jojo Magoo is, you know, all of those things, right? And Trump is a criminal and a narcissistic, like, sociopathic personality, and he doesn't care about you. And there's nothing there for you. There's nothing there worth saving. You know, it's just right there in front of you. and they just count on your fear or your stupidity or your overwhelm at the narrative that the system isn't there like you think it is. The system we're 100% dependent on is transitory and could disappear in a heartbeat, and it will, like a snap of the fingers, and the system's gone. And then what? Like, then what are you going to do? And that's what freaks everybody out, right? But the only thing is to be a slave to God, do God's bidding. Like, realize that God is there for you and God cares about you. It's the only slave master you have that loves you, because that's all God can do. And that your soul, wants you to endure whatever pain and suffering you have to go through here to bring you back to this. It's not a slave master, but the beloved. God isn't your slave owner. He's you love God, right? You want to serve God through your love, right? You love God so much that, you will do anything for God, and you'll suffer any kind of material pain and suffering and trauma and things just so that you can do God's work. And, that's the only real alternative that we all have to being a slave to a system that's powerless and collapsing right in front of us. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Robato, definitely reporting from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.